You're listening to Seek Travel Ride, a podcast sharing bike adventures from people from all over the world. And this episode is sponsored by Old Man Mountain, makers of the most durable bike racks out there. If you want to head out on an adventure, you need to strap gear onto your bike, and Old Man Mountain have you covered in a myriad of ways. Head to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Now, onto today's episode.
I had this idea and I thought, I'll start from the middle of the country and I'll kind of meander towards the coast, and then I'll be off across the channel and some big adventure, because a big adventure has to be abroad, was the original kind of mindset. And then I thought, well, actually, there's all these wonderful places on our doorstep. I should maybe go a little bit further. And so I planned a route that went east to the coast. And then I thought, well, I'll just follow the coast east. And then somehow it ended up being a figure of eight, in a sense that when I'd gone through Edinburgh, I then went straight across to Oban and then to the Outer Hebrides. And it did feel hypocritical to be taking ferries and to be going that far. But I also thought, when am I ever going to be this close to the Outer Hebrides again? I can't really miss this opportunity.
Welcome to Seek Travel Ride, where we share the stories and experiences of people taking amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello listeners, your host Bella Malloy here, and today we're going to be combining bike adventures with music and sustainability. Our guest is Sarah Small, a viola da gamba player who in the last couple of years has chosen to tour her concerts by bicycle. She carries her instrument on the bike and rides between performances as a deliberate alternative to high carbon touring. Now, for a long time, Sarah didn't see herself as a touring cyclist. Cycling was just simply how she lives, day rides, an occasional multi-day trip to get between places that she was living in. She'd leave home sometimes with just a big rucksack and she'd be bivvying behind hedges, and also didn't let her lack of bike mechanic skills stop her from having a go and taking some great adventures. Living car-free in a place like Devon meant bike commutes, and riding her bike is just part of her daily life. Then, in 2024, Sarah realised she was spending more on train fares than she was earning from playing at concerts. So rather than see that as a limitation, she experimented with cycling to performances instead. That decision took her from the UK to northern Germany, around the Dutch coast and back through Germany and the Netherlands. She wasn't carrying her instrument on that trip, but it did spark a bigger question in Sarah's mind about how musicians move through the world on tours. In 2025, she took that question further with her UK concert, a cycling tour called Good Again. Sarah chose to ride between performances from May through to July, and her route took her through locations from Southampton in the south up to Unst in Shetland. She held performances in community halls, churches, remote island venues, some super dreamy locations, and the bicycle was the way that she travelled, with her huge viola da gamba by her side. I'm stoked to be chatting with Sarah today. I want to talk about sustainable touring, the realities of carrying such a fragile instrument on a bicycle, how her audiences would respond to her when she arrives to her venues under her own steam, and of course all the unplanned adventures, or should I say maybe misadventures, that happen along the way when you travel by bike. Sarah Small, you dead set legend, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited to be talking with you, Sarah. I know I'm going to learn a lot today, a lot about music, a lot about what it's like to play a viola da gamba, a lot about what it's like to strap a viola da gamba to is it the left side of your bike? I've got a stack of questions. We're going to have a great adventure. But Sarah, the question I start my show with, and I ask it of all my guests, is, Sarah Small, do you remember the very first bike you ever rode?
The answer is actually no. It's terrible. I was thinking back to this and I remember always riding a bike. I think the earliest one is when I bought one with probably my childhood savings that were meant for something much bigger and more important, and I spent it on a touring bike with the vision that I would just set off one day and that would be my kind of means of transportation. Little did I know that I'd go and do things like this.
Oh, wow. But the idea of like traveling and touring on a bike, like seeing places, bike travel, that was something that you were super keen in, obviously.
Yeah, I remember watching a video there were two guys who were cycling, I think it was Land's End to John O'Groats, and they started it with absolutely nothing, no bike, minimal clothes, and no money. It just made me realize how when you're traveling at that pace, you're more connected with the people, places that you pass through, and just the kindness of strangers. And then their whole trip, by the end of it, they had bikes and they had everything they needed, but just the kindness of people along the way, it was just something that I found so fascinating. And I think that was always my interest in cycle touring. It was never about racking up big distances.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's funny because I personally have had, I guess, almost the opposite introduction to bike travel, because bike riding was definitely something I did for sport. It was something I did for fitness. I used to be that person on a road bike in Lycra in a group of people, getting up early, feeling amazing because I rode for an hour and then, paying too much for coffee. That was me, right? And I look back on it, especially as the host of a show that's all about bike adventures, I look back at how I have changed, and the speed that I travel and the distances that I go and all of that type of stuff has been thrown out the window. And it's those sort of experiences that you talk about that I seek out. That side of bike adventures, the idea of meeting new people, learning about them, exploring new places, that was really at the heart of why you were seeking it out as well.
Yeah, it's just the perfect way to see. Yeah, just, you see a path that you wouldn't normally go down. When you're on a bike, that curiosity is almost just heightened, and it's just always something that's been with me.
Yeah. I want to know then, like your first trip, I mentioned there in my intro, like the first trip, it wasn't like you even had a bike with panniers. You'd pack stuff into a big rucksack and sometimes you'd sleep behind a hedge. Like, tell me about one of those first trips.
Oh, well, it was just things like, so I've moved around a lot, and I'd moved somewhere pretty far away from where I guess home was. And so if I borrowed a car or something to do the move, I would then return it with my bike and then just cycle back to my new home without it. And I knew roughly how many days it would take, but I didn't know how to fix anything. I had probably not even the right tools. And if I had the tools, I didn't even know how to use them. And I would just, cycle till I got tired, get behind a hedge, and then off I went. And it's crazy to think that now, but at the time, as you know, you just do these things and it just feels very normal.
Yeah, wow. Can I ask, when you're, ducking in behind a hedge and sleeping, were you having a great sleep? Because I feel there's two types of people in the bike touring world, Sarah. There's people who just are totally cruisy and can wild camp and have the best night's sleep, and there's people who are a little bit twitchy on edge. Which one are you?
Oh, I'm the latter, definitely. I sleep terribly in a tent or a bivvy or anything.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I sleep terribly, full stop. If I'm in a tent, it's normally the second or third night that I can finally get into the rhythm of I'm in a different place. But if I'm wild camping, no, I don't think. I've still not had a great night's sleep wild camping. But you would have done a lot of this on this tour. How did you settle into that over the time?
I'm not sure I did. I was just aware as the tour went on that I was just getting progressively less and less sleep, and my brain was just functioning slower and slower each day. I suppose there is that sense of normality in that when you're always in your tent, the tent stays the same. So you're basically always sleeping in the same house. It's just the village that the house is in has moved. And so it doesn't feel that, it's not unsettling anyway. It's just, what it's like, the noises that you hear, sometimes you question what it is.
It's what's happening outside the tent that keeps me awake, not what's not the symphony of my sleeping mat as I roll over it and try and find a comfortable angle or something. No, I totally gel with that. You know what? I don't want to fast forward straight to bike adventures just yet. I want to know, as a total novice, about the instrument that you play, how you started playing it, and touring with it too.
Yeah. So the viola da gamba is it's a historical instrument that, I suppose the easiest way to describe it is it looks a bit like a cello crossed with a guitar. It has 7 strings. Typically they have 6, but I play a bass with an extra string. And they're fretted like a guitar, and you bow it like you would a cello, but you hold the bow almost like you would hold chopsticks. And so every movement is kind of the opposite to how a cellist bows, and you hold the hair of the stick. I'm explaining this terribly.
No. And listeners, this isn't a video podcast, but if you could see our faces and what I'm trying to do with my chopstick skills. Wow. Because I want to say something, because I have seen a video of you playing it. When you say it looks like a cello, I was like, oh, wow. Like, it actually doesn't even sit on the ground. Like, you balance it between your legs.
Yeah. So viola da gamba, I believe in Italian, means viola of the legs. So that is why. But they come in different sizes. and there's one that's basically the same size as a violin, and countless people have told me asked me why didn't you just take that one, because it could just go on my back. But there's something quite, as well as being quite eye-catching to be cycling with such a massive instrument, I just found it quite amusing to be carrying the most difficult one to transport.
Yeah, well, that sort of came in my mind as well. And I've sort of reflected back, Sarah, at the amount of people I've interviewed who maybe have toured with, say, like a ukulele. Hi, Jamie Hargreaves, or sometimes with a guitar. Hi, M. Holbert, you're a legend too. I have a question I ask people sometimes, what's an item of luxury that you don't need on your bike adventure, but you need to take it for you? And that's been their instrument. But yeah, the viola da gamba is next level instrument. It needs its special case, how it attaches to the bike. Listeners, I'm going to put pictures up on our on the episode page and obviously on our Instagram as well, so you can see this. But it is pretty impressive. Like it sits quite high on your bike too.
Yeah, there were many things to consider when figuring out how to transport it. Yeah, I left it quite late to actually find a solution. Like I basically had everything booked in, and I still hadn't actually found a solution because a trailer there'd been too much vibration. Because unlike a guitar, a gamba, like a cello, has a sound post, and I was really worried that the vibration would cause the sound post to move. But then I found out that apparently you can put it back into position with a fork. So I thought, as long as I've got a fork, it won't be a problem.
Oh my God, so hang on, again, total novice here. When you say it's got your soundboard, did you say, or a sound post?
Yeah, so there's a post, it's not glued, but it basically pushes against the belly of the instrument and the back, and that helps with the resonance. And that's quite prone to moving, like with humidity changes and as the wood changes. So with vibration from the road, there are so many things that could have gone wrong and just amazingly didn't. And a lot of people were very concerned about the instrument, less so me, and more just how the gamba was going to survive.
They obviously know that you got broad shoulders, you can take a beating, but the corrugations or the mudslings or the or the rain, probably more than anything in the UK, they're the rain. Because actually you do have a little protective like rain cover for your viola da gamba case as well. Like listeners, if you've seen people with, say, a backpack that's got a little rain cover, like your viola da gamba, it's not a pannier, I don't know what I would call it, case, I guess. It's got a rain cover as well. Did you have to make that?
So I thought I would, and then a little bit of internet searching, and I came across a website that sells cello case covers. And so, as you described, basically just like a rucksack cover, but for the shape of the instrument case. So it didn't really fit exactly, which meant that when the wind blowed, and it did a lot, it just billowed like a sail, but it kept the rain out. And now it's just the ratio of gaffer tape to original cover has kind of increased, but it's still working.
We call that gaffer tape in Australia 100 mile an hour tape for a reason, because it'll still stay together even if it's blowing 100 miles an hour. Yeah. There you go. Oh my God, I still have so many questions. Like, again, I shouldn't be so focused on this, but even seeing how it is on your bike, and it attaches really nicely there, but it does sit quite tall. So when you're mentioning things like wind there, I'm just thinking of how it must catch the wind, and also like the weight distribution on your bike as well, like how you're balancing on that. Like, how does that impact actually physically riding your bike when it's strapped on?
It was, or is, amazingly balanced. I don't quite know how it's worked out that way, but it feels almost like, she says this having never ridden a motorbike, like riding a motorbike. Like, it's just heavy, but really stable. When there's gusty winds, it's pretty scary because, yeah, it just catches. And normally when it's windy, it's rainy as well, so it catches the cover as well. So places like the Outer Hebrides, where you've got these little causeways between the islands, there'd be a massive gust and a camper van coming the way. There were a few moments when I thought, okay, this is it. So it's a bit challenging.
Yeah, and you were talking about causeways there. I was actually thinking like going over bridges and stuff. That can often, the wind really comes and hits you when you're going over an expanse of water in that type of a situation. And did you find yourself sort of like anticipating the gusts that were coming towards you?
Yeah. And I don't really know what the right thing to do is, other than to just go at a speed that you can quickly stop should you need to. But generally just make sure there's enough space, always to your left or right, depending on which country you're in, so that you've got somewhere to go. And I've never fallen off because of the wind.
Actually, that's a good question for you. I've seen I think, is your viola da gamba on the left side of your bike?
It's on the left, and when I went through France, I was going to transfer it to the other side to keep it away from the traffic,
Yeah,
but I didn't. I just left it.
yeah, because I was actually wondering, A, do you keep it away from the traffic, or B, do you have it there as a sort of visual cue for the driver to give you even more space?
It's both away from the traffic so that so that I get hit before my instrument because that's more valuable,
Oh,
and because it being quite high, when I look over my shoulder, it blocks the vision a bit. Whereas when it's so if it's on the side away from the traffic, then I can still clearly see what's coming.
I mentioned in my intro that you are car free, like you live without a car. So I imagine when you would be playing, say, practicing, gosh, this is an assumption. I'm not a musician, but say you were going somewhere where you live locally to go and play your viola da gamba. I'm imagining that you would normally take that with you on your bike. So, what was it like to start traveling larger distances with it?
Um, it was it just felt normal. That's the strangest thing. I think so before I went on the big tour, I did a couple of test rides with the entire setup. And one of them was down in Cornwall where it's like the hills are like the moon in Wallace and Gromit, if that's a reference that lands with anybody. And I thought that's the perfect kind of area to really test what the setup is like. And it was just generally the weight of everything was a bit of a shock. But otherwise, yeah, it just felt very normal because a lot of how we travel, if we're using public transport, it's the final mile bit that makes a difference where you might have to jump in a taxi or try and negotiate buses or something that's more challenging. Whereas when you've got everything on your bike, you just go. And so it was just going, but going further and with a heavier setup.
Oh my gosh, that bit that you just said there, the final mile makes a difference. It's so true, and it's sort of like the barriers to even taking the transport that could allow you to like that has no restrictions on it. So I think of the amount of times that I've taken a train on a bike tour. I do that quite regularly in France. Not ashamed of it at all. It's allowed me to go to places I otherwise wouldn't be able to reach in the time that I've got. And France is pretty cool and set up with train travel and bike travel, but it's still pretty stressful. There's certain trains you can or can't go on. There might be certain times of the day that you can or cannot go. There's always the train station, and is the platform going to involve stairs? And is there a way to get down the stairs? It's not just carrying everything. And then if I do have to carry everything and I'm on my own, is someone going to take half of my bags while I struggle to take the other half because I'm a bike rider, not someone who lifts in the gym? I know I probably should. And, I can't, like these are the barriers that we're talking about. And then you get on the train and it's like, I might have a bike spot booked, but then there's 5 bikes there, or there's no bikes there, or they've got a system that doesn't even fit. Like, how do you manage that? Also with the viola da gamba.
Yeah, it's really stressful. I've actually got a train to take tomorrow with 2 instruments and all my stuff. And I'm just trying to pretend that it's not going to happen because there are trains here where it'll say reservation not required. And that just means that you go on if you can squeeze on. And when it gets busier, they're probably going to kick you off or try to.
So you, in a way, where you do always have to travel with that extra little bit of flexibility, don't you? That things might
Yeah.
be a bit trickier. It's no different if I reflect back on it, Sarah, and you would resonate with this. It's always slower going when you're riding through a city and to get out of a city. Even if the infrastructure's there, it's just so much slower.
Absolutely. Oh, city. Yeah. It's the navigation and everything. There was, where was I? In Liverpool. I just remember I set off at some ridiculous time in the morning to get out of the city before the traffic, not realizing that I couldn't go through. There's a tunnel that goes under the river, but bikes aren't allowed through it. And the only way to cross the river was to take a 2-minute train ride. And I was at the station well before the trains even started running. So it was just thinking all the sleep that I could have had. Anyway, and to get on that train, I had to fit my bike into the tiniest lift with everything. And then just like, on its back wheel and all these bags. And it's in those moments you just think, this all just for like a tiny, tiny journey. I like, how much easier would it have been to cycle however many kilometers around some like over some bridge further away or something, just because it's so stressful.
Oh, it is. It is. It's funny. I did that last year. I was in a little Pyrenean village. Well, it's not a little. I guess it's a town technically. In the Pyrenees called Keon. Beautiful ancient place. Lots of ancient history there. People, Roman history too, if you want to go and check it out. Lovely on the river. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, where I was staying, like the smallest lift known to man, and they were amazing in like don't worry, you can take your bike up with you, which was that's like the first barrier sometimes if you're staying actually not in your tent and in a hotel. Like, are they going to like have conniptions when you walk in there with the bike? Because some people embrace it. Some people are like, whoa, that's like how dare you bring, a dirty bike in here? They're like, no, that's fine, take the lift. And I'm like, okay, it's not on the ground floor because you do want a room that doesn't involve going upstairs, right? But yeah, it was like the tiniest lift in the world. And I do have a photo of me like being a contortionist with like my bike up high, wheels spin going, how am I doing this? But it does work. But you are right. They sort of don't sound like significant things, but they are sort of little things that you constantly have to problem solve sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, it's one of those things that in the moment you just kind of think, this is so like it's just so ridiculous. And I'm aware that people are doing these like epic adventures through these wild remote places, and I'm there in this like tiny lift just kind of thinking this is a struggle that I shouldn't be having.
Can I just say though, sort of by the way, and you mentioned this a little bit before we press record, there's a nice tendency to always think that what you're doing isn't epic and awesome because it's not in a faraway place on the other side of the world. But can I just say what you've done is epic and awesome, and like I want you to somehow just instill a little bit of pride in what you've actually done on your tour, because you certainly deserve to. And I find on this show, listeners, I highlight the 0.1% of people who do huge, huge things, but what you're doing is still a huge, huge thing. Like, you toured for how many weeks last year? Was it just like 4,500 kilometres? That's a huge tour, Sarah. Definitely, you deserve to be proud of what you've done.
Oh, thank you.
2024, that was where you first dipped in the toe in the water and actually riding to your venues. I think you said you didn't have the viola da gamba hooked on your bike at that stage, but you did actually decide to ride to events. I think more so, like, if you didn't, you weren't really getting paid for the concerts you were doing because you were spending that on transport costs anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. As you know, trains are just absurdly expensive in contrast to flight tickets. And you often get booked for concerts where they'll pay your travel, assuming that you're going to fly. And when you say, actually, I'm going to take the train instead, the reply is usually, okay, well, we'll cover the equivalent of the flight cost, but you have to pay the rest. And I just kind of accepted that for a while, and then realized that I was spending far more on the travel than I was actually getting in the fee. And then it's like paying to go to work. And I thought, well, this isn't sustainable on many levels. And it's not changing anything, just quietly accepting that, or turning down work. And if you turn down the work, somebody else will just jump in and do it anyway. Neither one of which is really raising the issue, which is that we shouldn't be touring in that way. We shouldn't be flying so frequently. And it's just the fact that so much of the music that we play is inspired by the natural world and things like the birdsong that we hear less of because of the actions that we're taking in order to bring that performance to audiences. And it just seems absolutely bonkers that this connection is not being made, and it's just justified purely because like financially it's cheap. Well, it's cheap for now, but there's massive costs further down the line. And it's just, it was just one of those things where I thought I've got to try a different approach. And the train fares for that one concert, I can't remember how much they were, but hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And I just thought, there's no way that I can afford that. There's no way that I'm going to pay it, but I really wanted to do the gig. And I love cycling. And so it just made sense. Why not cycle there?
Oh my gosh. I love that it's combined your two passions there. But also there is a really valid point here where it still blows my mind that train travel, well, no, I mean, maybe train travel should cost what it does. More to the point, it blows my mind that we're still living in a world that's, like a bin fire at the moment environmentally with climate change, where tickets to somewhere are so, they're nothing. You can play small fry and travel across countries or something, where that shouldn't necessarily be the case. And that's part of the problem too, right? Listeners, when I head away from home on my own bike adventures, there are a few things I always take with me, and having a VPN has become non-negotiable. Remote work and bike travel are just a fact of life for me now, especially as I split my time between Australia and France. I've been using NordVPN for around 4 years now, and it means that I can get on with all the boring life admin that isn't going away just because I'm on my own bike adventure. I can use public Wi-Fi to do things like banking, logging on from cafes, campgrounds, hotels, train stations and airports. And I always know NordVPN have got my back, giving me peace of mind that my data is protected. I like that Nord's simple and fast to use. It works on all of my devices. To get the best discount off your own NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/STR. Our link's going to give you 4 extra months on their 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link's in the podcast episode description box. Support the brands that are supporting this podcast. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, it's just this, it's almost like instant gratification. It's like you can just book a flight for less than, I don't know, £10, and you're in a different country for a day, a weekend, and then it's like transporting your body but not your mind, and like so quickly. It's so unnatural in that sense as well. But just what are you experiencing of the culture and everything that you're basically passing over in this tiny metal tube that I don't think anybody enjoys being in, to then just be somewhere different for the sake of being somewhere different probably, and then coming back. And I don't really see the point of it.
No, and I think the other point that you raise as well is the more sustainable forms of transport aren't necessarily by any means achievable for people because they've been priced out to be so much more expensive. It was interesting. Last year I was in the UK. I spent a few days up in Scotland, almost a week, which was fantastic with some very, very lovely people that are near and dear to me. And I chose to take the train all the way back down to where I live in the Pyrenees, which was amazing. So it was a trip. It went from Glasgow to London, London to Paris, and then from Paris I took the sleeper train overnight all the way down south to where I am, which was amazing. But there were 2 things that made that possible for me. One was being able to afford the ticket, which was certainly a lot more expensive than if I chose to fly. And 2, it was also the time. Like it was, like for me, it was it was a holiday within a holiday. It was like 24 hours of train travel where I could stare out a window, blissfully looking at this environment go past me, which was amazing. And then I had an awesome experience on the sleeper train where it was me and 5 other kick-ass women. Average age of the others were people in their mid-60s about to hike across the Pyrenees, solo female travellers, awesome women. Wish I had a pod with them. Anyway, but like that was an experience for me, but it was time and money that I could actually, in my respect, afford. But not everyone can do that, which I guess it's almost a question without an answer sometimes with that type of problem. But also that it did push you to the idea of thinking outside the box and pushed you more into, well, actually, I do like hearing the bird song in the morning, and I do like feeling the landscape that I'm riding through and having those interactions with people. So being, in a way, serendipity, playing a card as saying, well, you love bike travel and you like playing concerts and don't miss out on either of those. It sort of has come together for you.
Yeah, your point about the time that it takes is a really important one, because for a lot of us, it's not off-putting. It's a barrier because, especially if you have more normal job, like a 9 to 5, being able to take off that much amount of time, which you'd have to take as a holiday just to travel, isn't always possible. And that's where I'm fortunate with the work that I do, like planning or coming up with the tour. In one sense, it meant turning down a lot of work because it was 3 months or 10 weeks, whatever it was, to effectively say no to work. But also music is this, it can be played anywhere. It is just a different form of communication, and those anywhere possibilities are all the way along the route of the travel. And when you're traveling by bike, you just find somewhere that is the right point, and then you try and put the work there. So you basically just make your own work. And I still am trying to show that if you're going to take the time to travel to one thing, see what you can add to add value along the way, and then make it worth your while even more, and also worth the while of people who live in those in-between places who might not actually be able to go to the big destination venue or whatever it is.
Yeah, and actually that's a real awesome part of your tour, which I loved, was it wasn't just about going and playing in the bigger towns and cities. Like you were able to then bring music to places that otherwise wouldn't be able to experience that, which then has the flip side of you're also cutting down the journey time and the travel for people in those places who otherwise have to spend a lot of money and a lot of their own time to travel to the big ticket places to go and listen to music that you can play with them. I love that element of it as well. And I love that you're able to have that as part of your tour. I think you would announce shows in places that you were going to be at. It also led to being able to play in some pretty awesome, dreamy locations too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, as soon as you said that, my mind immediately took me back to Smoo Cave in Durness. Like, how often do you get to play in a cave?
Oh, the acoustics there would have been wild.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And it's just, yeah, because audience travel is significant. So by taking the performance to the audience, again, cancels out that because they're already there. But yeah, the in-between place is just so much more interesting. Could have been the tiniest village hall that maybe on the surface looked really ugly, but actually had an incredible acoustic. But just playing to people who maybe just never hear live music, let alone classical music or something as uncommon as the gamba, it just felt like a privilege.
Oh my gosh, can I just tell you something randomly that popped into my head when you were talking about the village hall and just, the acoustics of that? So in the little French village where I live, and every village in France has this, is a salle de fête, so the festival, the town hall, where the village gets together as a community and celebrates a few times a year. Sometimes there might be a wedding there, sometimes it's just, the mayor monthly meetings. But in my little area, there's a group which sing a very specific type of song. It's not like Gregorian monks, but it's almost that type of music. So it's an amazing acoustic. And I remember when we first moved into our house and we had the windows open, it was summer. And it's every Tuesday night at around 9. We just had this amazing music come down the street of people singing, and we look forward to that every time now. Oh, the singers are here, and I remember when we first heard it, we actually walked down the street just to like, whoa, what's going on? Aussies in a new place hearing music like this, this blew our mind. But I was just actually thinking how awesome it is that you're taking that to another step where there would be people in, the village that I live, the village that other people live, whether it's in the UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, wherever. Like, bringing music to people like this, just because we're not in a big city doesn't mean that we don't appreciate it. And so being able to actually perform in those places would be just as uplifting, right?
Absolutely. Also, you get a much more... One thing that I've noticed before speaking to you this evening was I went back and watched some of the really cringy videos of me speaking about the tour as it was happening, and I realised that I have an extremely limited vocabulary. There were just so many incredible moments, but trying to speak about them I find so difficult, which is exactly why I play an instrument, because the music speaks and I don't have to just blabber on. But to play to those people, their reactions just feel more genuine, and you're more connected. You don't have that barrier that you have in a typical concert hall where there's like the performer, this gap, and then the audience, and the performer walks out, and it's almost transactional. They bow, the audience claps, the performer plays something, the audience claps, the performer bows, and they walk off. And then you do this weird thing that I find so painfully uncomfortable, but we still do, where you go off and you pretend to have gone, and then the audience continues clapping,
and then you go to the encore. Yeah.
And then you leave and you don't actually interact. Whereas when you play in these places, also I invited questions, not just about the music, but about the tour and why I was doing it. And I would always explain the bigger project. But people are curious, and you hear what they actually felt when you played, and knowing how it communicated something. And it really opens people up. Also with like climate conversations, just by seeing how much one other person cares, inspires them. And just, I don't know, there's that sense of not hopelessness that we can sometimes have when we think we're the only one, but when you just realize that there's somebody else speaking about it, it just makes it so much easier to feel like you have some power to change something. And all of those elements just come together just by playing in different venues and using like the tools that you have. In my case, music, but for somebody else it's something else. We don't have to... Yeah, I'm just rambling, but I think you get my point.
I get your point. I get your point so starkly. And it's also, you're able to have conversations with people at a level that you wouldn't be able to have if you're playing in a huge town venue hall or something like that. And It's funny. I equate it just a month or so ago. I held a couple of live shows in Melbourne. Both sold out, both extremely well received. Amazing to be able to have people in a room as opposed to just knowing that people are tuning in on a podcast, right? And to be able to see the faces and have those conversations. And the two venues were so starkly different. The first show was a brilliant venue, but a smaller venue. And our room, like, it was overflowing, probably more than the fire safety regulations technically allowed. But we got by, no fires were had. But it just meant that me and the three awesome guests panel were sat, and then probably within a metre was where the chairs were, and everyone was all around, right? And the second show, huge venue, more people there, great, fantastic, had a great time, everyone in the audience, I love you, thanks for coming. But it was us again sat, and there was probably maybe 4 metres or 5 maybe before the first chairs, and just even that gap, the ambience in the room felt different. So I really feel that. But being able to have those conversations with people, it's not that you don't enjoy maybe an experience in one over the other, but yeah, it is a different ambience and it is a different atmosphere for sure.
Definitely. Also, your point about the gap just reminded me of, there were most venues I'd be on the floor, the same level as the audience, and there was somewhere there kind of be this push to be on the stage, and I'd always try and come down from it because, as well as it just making me feel like a diva, I just wanted to be like level. We're all equal. I'm just the one who's playing something. And yeah, I just don't think that there are reasons to be higher up, maybe for sound projection, but in smaller venues, it's all about just being together. And I just, didn't want to be on some kind of, platform.
Can I just say, Sarah, randomly, I don't know if this could ever happen, but I have just got a new thing on my bucket list, which is to somehow have you come to my area of France on a tour and listen to you playing in my local little village, Salle de Fête. That would be amazing. I don't know what you're...
Yeah, sure.
And you know what? There's a really nice bike-friendly route in my part of France, which doesn't involve the huge mountain climbs, but still allows you to feel like you're in the mountains. It's called the Vélo Sud, or the V81, and it goes from the Atlantic coast all the way to the Mediterranean, through the foothills. Like, imagine how many Salle de Fête halls you could play in along the way there.
That sounds lovely. Yeah, lovely.
Regardless, I have it on my bucket list to see you touring somewhere, and I have to arrive there by bicycle. That would just be amazing and epic on many, many levels. I want to take you back to 2025 and your tour, the Good Again tour. That took you all the way around the UK there, and I just loved looking at a map, actually, of all the places that you visited, the places that you played, and you took it to the unconventional places, you took it to the far-away places, a few ferries involved to get you all the way up to Shetland, you went to Orkney as well, you're in the Hebrides. Like, they are amazing places, but equally also through Wales, through England as well. I want you to tell me about how you actually put this whole route together.
Yeah. I don't know if I did it in the usual way or a sensible way, because originally I had this idea and I thought, oh, well, I'll start from the middle of the country and I'll kind of meander towards the coast, and then I'll be off across the channel and some big adventure, because a big adventure has to be abroad, was the original kind of mindset. And then I thought, well, actually, there's all these wonderful places on our doorstep. I should maybe go a little bit further. And so I planned a route that went east to the coast, and then I thought, well, I'll just follow the coast east. And I wanted to stick to, we have these national cycle network routes, and they link up also some of the Eurovelo routes as well, and I wanted to use as many of them as possible to also just kind of show how good some of the infrastructure is, but also some of it is terrible. But because then I'd be more likely to pass other cyclists as well. And so up the east coast, and then I wanted to go to islands where possible. So I went across to Lindisfarne, which is connected with a causeway to the mainland. And then somehow it ended up being a figure of 8, in a sense that when I'd gone through Edinburgh, I then went straight across to Oban and then to the Outer Hebrides. And it did feel hypocritical to be taking ferries and to be going that far. But I also thought, when am I ever going to be this close to the Outer Hebrides again? I can't really miss this opportunity. So that's why I included them. And then did the Hebridean Way and met some just, wonderful people cycling and walking there, who bizarrely I saw when I played in Bristol, some of the people I'd seen walking on the Outer Hebrides. And it's just, this happened a lot.
That's awesome.
And then
I love that you met random people somewhere and then saw them again somewhere totally different. That's brilliant.
yeah, I mean, when I went, I continued round the north coast and then up through Orkney and then to Shetland and then to Unst, which is the very top, where I played in this Viking longhouse and met, there's a lady in the audience there. And then what was meant to be my final gig in London months later, or a month later, whatever it was, she came up to me and I thought, I recognise her. And we'd met in Unst. And it's just, these familiar faces keep popping up everywhere, especially when you do certain routes. You find yourself just seeing another, familiar face on the road. And then, where did I go after that? I cut out a chunk of the North Coast because you've probably heard of the North Coast 500.
Oh, yeah, but I've also heard that it's not the nicest place to necessarily be there on a bike.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just full of camper vans. I think I spent more time in laybys waiting for them to pass than actually going through. So I tried to cut out the worst section of that and then rejoined the mainland in Aberdeen to then go south. And yeah, the map is on my website and all of that. But so I planned the route first and I planned it so that it would average about 100 kilometres a day. And then I just looked for venues on the map where I could play. But I was looking for venues that were community run or doing interesting things tied to sustainability or community resilience, like interesting projects, not just hire a venue, like a soulless venue in a way. And that was quite tricky. There was a lot of, not so much rejection, just silence. I wrote to 170 plus venues, and to get 31 in the end just shows how tricky it was.
Wow. What do you think the issue there was? Do you think it's just a reluctance, or do you think it's just no capacity to respond? Do you think no want to respond? Like, what do you think?
There was a combination. It was funny, if I wrote to a kind of conventional music, like a venue that hosts a series of classical concerts, and it wasn't really the kind of venue I was hoping for, but it was in the area, so I'd just take anything. And the reply would be something like, "We're not looking for your kind of music." And I thought, well, that's interesting, because I play exactly the kind of music that you promote, but because I'm delivering it in a different way, they didn't want it.
That's like a big slap in the face. Like, oh,
it was.
yeah, that's horrible.
No, it was quite funny though, because I remember I put a lot of time into choosing places, and I'd write maybe it was my lengthy emails that put them off, but detailed programs tying into if there was some like historical connection there between the repertoire that I'm playing, and I was just trying to justify it, and then you just get nothing. And then on my tour, inevitably I'll be passing the door, and I just pass several venues and just be like, oh yeah, they didn't want me. They didn't want me. So there was a bit of that.
Again, not to try and derail anything, but I feel like my little Salle de Fête Village Hall would always want you.
Thank you.
But I want to take you something that you just randomly said, and it quite naturally fell into the sentence. You know, I was playing in a Viking longhouse, and you've mentioned how you've played in like a cave. Wow, like did you think that these would be the places you would be? Like, did you hope these are the venues that you would actually be playing in beforehand?
I hoped that things like that would happen. I did try and get performances. Like, I played at some reserves, like nature reserves, and I wanted more things like that to happen. And there were some extra kind of informal performances added in, like in castle ruins, or like in a cafe, or just popping up in the corner of a pub and things like that. And they were such fun, and it was great to have those kind of unplanned and just added into the journey.
Yeah, and has it also given you a mind to the possibilities of future sort of concerts and tours as well? Because, and look, this is an assumption on my behalf, and I'm not from the music industry. I'm not someone who plays professionally by any measure. In fact, I don't really play at all. I sing really badly, but I do like to sing. Anyway, that's by the by. But I imagine also that in this day and age where it feels like, you know, only a select few will ever be chosen by an algorithm to be able to make it big and play big venues and stuff, the music industry is definitely suffering at the behemoths of, you know, the likes of Spotify and stuff like that, which is hurting artists more and more. Does actually designing your own tour and then being able to play in smaller venues, maybe not playing to huge crowds, but, you know, by the sounds of it, the smaller ones are the ones that are energising you even more. But seeing the interest and the keen interest from smaller communities, give your mind to the possibility of continuing to do these things and actually funding a better lifestyle for you as a musician as well?
Yeah, this past, not this, a couple of weeks ago, it was only a week long tour in Devon and Dorset, which is in the southwest of England. And that came about because I had one concert in the diary, and I just before Christmas moved to Edinburgh, and I thought I'm not going to go all the way down there just for one gig. So I just put out a very quiet call to say, does anyone else want a concert? Like, I'll play in your house, I'll play in your cafe, a care home, wherever, like whoever wants to hear it. And the week just was full. And playing to 10 people in somebody's house was just wonderful. And then the next day to play in, what was it, Exeter Priory, the oldest building in Exeter. And it was just stunning, the venue. It was absolutely packed. I don't quite know how. And then playing with a musician who I'd met on my tour, and she'd composed this piece and we played together, and it was just so special. But all of those things came about from just having one thing that I'm just saying, does anyone want to hear what I'm doing? And knowing that the answer is yes, you then feel like, it's not like doing a job, it's more than that. So I see in the future more like shorter tours, not necessarily 10 weeks on the road, but just adding, kind of stacking things together, because I just find it so much more rewarding as well. But I also think it's just quite a nice, it's also sad in a way that financially it is so much better than doing some of these more kind of formal things once you start accounting for all of like venue fees. And then it's a very simple, I mean, I'm always craving a simple life, and for this it's just like taking everything, making everything even more simple than it was. And I just I think it's going to keep working.
It's funny, like my mind just keeps thinking about the sort of possibilities that lay ahead of you, you know, and whether that's in the UK, maybe you'll go across and do the Wild Atlantic Way in Ireland. You know, that's a country that really embraces music in small, you know, Irish music is quintessential with that culture. Like, you know, they're the sort of things that I'm sort of thinking about for you as well. Do you find like you've just unlocked more possibility? It was like, you know, that tour in 2025 showed you the thirst for it. You've tested the water in very inclement weather, it must be said, in January 2026. But, like, it must be putting your mind forward to all the possibilities ahead now.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting that you mentioned the Wild Atlantic Way. I've plotted a route round Ireland, and I haven't quite decided when I'm going to go. But unlike when I did last year's tour, and it was like a full-time job planning everything and organising all the events, this I want to do without as much technology as possible. So I'm writing letters at the moment to the posties over in Ireland, and the plan being that they effectively choose where I play, because during the pandemic I worked as a postie.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh, we so need to go down this rabbit hole. But keep telling this story. I'll take you back.
You realise how you're like, you see what's going on in the community, particularly like when I was doing it, and it was I began working during all the lockdowns, so you're even more connected with people, but you know what's going on, you know who's maybe not getting out so much, you know who, like, you're kind of like not the spider in the web, but you really have eyes everywhere. And I just thought they're the perfect people to know where music might be something that's not just appreciated, but maybe needed or would just fit. And so the plan is to send those letters, and they will have a phone number, but there'll be no email address, and they will have all the information they need if I've done it right. And I will just turn up on the date that I said I'll be there, and hopefully have somewhere to play. And that's the adventure that I have in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking about, you know, where music is most needed and in community areas where it's most needed too, you know, it also makes me think of people who are socially isolated that could do with something to bring them together. Or, you know, maybe it's like a nursing home or something like that, where you've got people who can't physically get out and about, but, you know, music could be brought to them too. I love that idea. Okay, take me back to being a postie though. Like,
yeah, I mean, as you know, like there were no concerts happening during the pandemic, and there were lots of. I think it's no secret that there's a lot of privilege in the classical music world, and so there were many people who just, when they lost their work, they could use the time without performances in the diary to create, to hone their skills in some way or come up with some new project. I just panicked about money, and I thought, how am I going to, feed myself basically? And I had no relevant qualifications for anything else. So I thought, oh, I'll be a postie because it's a ticket to the outdoors when nobody else is able to go. And I did that for probably 18 months. And for the most part, absolutely loved it. I remember the winter was the coldest winter that we'd had. Actually, I think the coldest winter that we've had for quite a number of years, and just having such painful chilblains all over my hands, and I just thought, it's a good job I've got no gigs because I can't play anyway.
Gosh, there's nothing worse than that feel too. It's not like you can even then at the end of the day like hug a cup of tea or something with them, because like you can't. You have to ease them into warmer temperatures. It's not like having a really nice steaming hot shower or something you can do with chilblains.
Yeah, no, but yeah, that's what I did, and I kind of miss it in a way.
Yeah, and as you said, you like a postie or a male person for other countries, like it is a community connector, and it's funny. Like I think of how different that is around the world, and how much more important it is to more isolated communities as well. On the topic of community, there, I'd love to have an insight into. I want to know how much more you felt community in those isolated places. We were talking about you holding concerts in Orkney or the Shetlands or the Outer Hebrides, and, they're the easy, far-off places that we talk about. But equally, even in a small, tiny village somewhere, did you feel community was stronger in those places?
Yes, definitely. I was amazed. Thinking of the Outer Hebrides, before I went, I had this idea that it would feel really isolated with the houses so far apart and a small number of residents. I just imagined that there wasn't so much reason to draw people together, or the people didn't really come together that much. However, traveling through, I realized that word spreads incredibly quickly. And so at those performances that I did, it would be full, and it would just be word of mouth that spread. And you realize that everybody is looking out for each other there. And then in mid Wales, there was a venue that I played at called the Hanging Gardens, and it's just a wonderful place. And it was just packed with just people from the surrounding area, and everybody seemed to just know each other. Everybody was there just supportive and not necessarily that interested in my music. It was just, this was a community gathering in a way, and I was just there that evening.
Yeah. The best adventure bike is the one that you already have. Now, while I'm here in Australia, mine is a dual suspension mountain bike, and it has no fork mounts. I used to wonder how I would go carrying anything up the front of that bike without risking damaging the fork and the front suspension. That's where Old Man Mountain's axle pack comes in. It has fixed that problem instantly for me. The axle pack comes with an Old Man Mountain axle that you put onto your bike, and that means the load transfers through that axle and not your fork. This means I can add cargo cages and bags and pack extra water, layers, overnight gear, food, the lot, and take my bike off-road on the roughest of tracks and know it's not going to be damaged from that load at all. It has helped turn my dual suspension mountain bike, which I've already owned, into the perfect adventure bike for the routes that I am riding. Go to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Support the brands that support this podcast. Now back to the episode. Yeah, and I imagine also because it is something that I've definitely learned, like the smaller communities, the more isolated communities, people sort of need each other a little bit more to get by. As a general consensus, they do come together. But I think also you would have learnt so much about those communities as well. And I'm not just talking about a certain people that you learn about, but also they're probably more inclined to wear a little bit more pride about the place that they're residing in and sharing about the place too, and whether that's history, whether that's nature, whether that's, you know, go here, or did you know that this happened here? Like, you would have had those sort of interactions, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things about staying with local people, either through because I used warm showers, but also just people who were just so kind and just insisted that I stayed with them. And then just spending the time together and learning about their lives and listening to the music that's been a part of their life. And yeah, you don't get that if you just push on and rush through.
Exactly. I want you to take me somewhere random. Like, I'm putting you on the spot here, I know, but take me somewhere random where you sort of got that moment in reflection now, like something that you think about, a place, a community, you know, learning about something. What would you tell me about?
Um, I'm trying not to say the Hanging Gardens again, but actually, yeah, there were several. Another one that does spring to mind is just north of Northallerton, which is it's I think North Yorkshire, and it was a venue that I think was previously a dairy farm, and this collective had come together and bought the land and the buildings and basically turned it into this incredible venue that they're still working on. But it's using everything that was either there already, like the glass things that the cow's milk went into when it was functioning, but
Milk urns?
maybe
Yeah, jugs. I know what you're talking about.
what you're talking about. And yeah, and they're now the lights and the boards on the roof are from like everything was just repurposed, and just the passion with which they created all these spaces and then seeing it thrive. And I think that was one of those moments when I just thought, yeah, don't overlook the in between, because it wasn't really, or it isn't a venue that is served by public transport. It's not in a particularly busy area, yet they draw in regular crowds, and it's run by also younger people. That was the other thing, because quite often any of these community ventures, they seem to be run by the older generation, those who maybe have retired and see it more as a passion project, whereas these are people who are actually trying to make something viable for the future. And that was pretty inspiring to think of one. Yeah.
You are right. Like, if I was to close my eyes and imagine a place that's quite isolated, and I think of the community there, I do think that it's a community that's, well, I don't want to use the phrase dying out, but it's an older community. There's people of a more mature age there. And, I mean, you know, every now and then you see the clickbait headlines of some abandoned village trying to draw people back into the area to, you know, spruce it up or something like that. But I do wonder, Sarah, where we are in a world where people are starting to become more environmentally conscious as well, whether these collectives of younger people getting together to do more sustainable stuff will see maybe a more thriving space for these type of places like you were describing, like the idea of, you know, an upcycled venue, for lack of a better way to put it. Whether these are things that we're going to start seeing, whether people are going to start looking at living sustainably within a smaller area and bring those community vibes back too. And I also wonder, gosh, this is a hypothesis, totally, listeners, and maybe you can see where my brain's thinking here, but as we live in a place that's drilled by phone screens and social media and disconnection, even though we're the most connected we could ever be, I wonder whether there will be a yearning to push back towards these face-to-face type of things and to actually yearn for community, because I feel there's a extra sense of loneliness that's gone hand in hand with the way that technology is pushing us now, especially with the advent of AI as well, and whether that is something that we're going to see. Who knows?
I think it's already happening.
And you would have seen this on your tour?
Yeah, but I just think it is something that we're all craving already.
Mm.
And I hope it just only snowballs.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly put myself in that category as well. The other thing that we've talked about as well is there is an appetite for it. You were going to small places and people were turning up. So that sort of shows you that people want these sort of things as well, which I think's absolutely, you know, yeah, hats off to you for doing something totally different, but also for flipping it and showing that actually this is what people want as well. I think that's just so beautiful. I want to pivot to the non-glamorous side of it. Like, you know, we were talking about squeezing into little tiny lifts and dealing with different weather and stuff. and we talked about a little bit about it offline as well. But I want to know, how is it when a phrase that you've used a few times now is just how long that tour was, and it was a few months on the road, and there's a mental fatigue and exhaustion that goes with that, as well as physical fatigue. And I want to know, what is it actually like when you've been toiling away riding your bike through, say, not so nice weather, you've turned up, you're really tired, maybe all you'd really like is just a cup of tea and a slice of cake and a warm shower and an early night, but actually no, you're going to have to be playing. Like, how was it to be able to be energised to play when perhaps you've had an exhausting day, practically, physically, bike touring as well?
It's funny to think back, because I remember when I cycled to Lubeck on that tour, I just thought, oh, imagine if I did this and then had to do a concert at the end of the day. Oh, that's ridiculous. And then decided to do this tour, which involved some weeks where it was just a concert day after a concert day after a concert day after a concert day. And yeah, you'll know that when you're cycling, it's not just physical, it's also being hyper aware of everything that is happening around you. And I was so conscious of, with having my gamba, I always look out for potholes anyway, but just I was so fixed almost on the road equally as everything else, just to avoid anything that might damage the instrument. And so my eyes were just so tired at the end of the day from that. However, I think because I knew that there was an endpoint in sight, I just thought, well, I have this job to do and I have to communicate this thing and I have to play to the best of my ability, and tiredness is not going to stop me, I guess. And I'd managed to keep going. And about 5 minutes before probably every performance, there'd be at this moment where I just thought, how am I going to get through this? I am running on empty. And then suddenly you walk out, you do your thing, and then afterwards just absolutely flop, and then do it again the next day. And I just managed to do it for long enough.
Yeah, and I guess also you get into a rhythm with it, don't you? Like, you get into a routine with, this is what my day looks like, and this is, I guess, what my job is, and it also involves bike touring and stuff. The thing that you mentioned there, the fatigue of physically looking out on the road because of, you know, having to take in the idea of you can't damage this beautiful, precious instrument as well, and that your eyes were physically tired. Again, that's something that I just wouldn't think of as a default.
Yeah.
Gosh. Were there places that you got to that you were like, I need to be here longer than a day?
Everywhere.
Yeah, wow. And actually, well, leading into that quickly, are you the sort of person that wants to go back to somewhere that you've already been to?
Yes. So I took a few days off, and when I did, I just felt like I didn't know what to do with myself because I'd just been perpetually moving. But when I was just constantly, like, it's like I said, the people that I met and would stay with, I wanted to actually hear more of their stories. And there were some occasions, I remember there was one lady that I found on Warm Showers, and I'd agreed to camp in her garden after a concert, and I knew that it was going to be about 10:30, 11 p.m. when I got there. And it was strange because earlier in the day I bumped into her in the nearby town. I was buying bananas and she recognized me, well, because who else is carrying a gamba around with them?
You wouldn't be able to be too incognito.
Yeah. And she took my bananas with her to look after them. And at that concert, somebody offered me a nice warm bed and like 5 minutes down the road as opposed to this camping. And I just was like, no, I have to go because this lady's got my bananas and I promised that I'd be there. And I kind of begrudgingly cycled there. But then when I actually met her properly, she had all these amazing stories to tell, but we had such a small amount of time because it was just so late and I'd have to be off so early the following morning, that there were just many occasions like that where I just thought, if I didn't rush so much, I could have actually learned a lot more and seen more interesting things and made the most of my time there. But I wanted to get round the UK as much as possible and within a certain period of time, so there was some kind of sacrifice to make. But I've definitely got a long list of places and people who I want to go back and visit by bike, of course.
Something you mentioned at the very start as well, Sarah, was like you loved the idea of taking a bike tour because of the people that you would meet along the way. And when you were designing this route, you took in some of the bike routes because you wanted to meet other bike travellers. I want you to tell me about some other people that you met that were riding bikes and those sort of stories too. Like, did you have many interactions with people riding and stuff?
Yeah, often there'd be people like near to campsites and things, often on their little kind of weekend tours, and he would sometimes cycle with me for half an hour or so. And then I did say, when I was promoting the concerts, that if anyone wanted to cycle with me, just get in touch and cycle for as long as you want. And so at some of the concerts, people would turn up and just say, right, where are we meeting tomorrow? And they'd cycle with me for half a day, sometimes the whole day. And yeah, they were often on very fast bikes and very speedy people, and I was not on a fast bike and I'm not a speedy person, so I definitely struggled to keep up. But that was really nice, because as much as it's nice to be by yourself and just kind of in the rhythm of it, because there's a lot of noise and a lot of talking with the concerts, and then beforehand, afterwards, and sometimes you just want to be on your own, just pedaling. It was just nice to have that broken up. And often it would be people who, I remember there was a guy in, oh goodness, where was it? On the north coast of Scotland. And he was just on his commute to the shop on, is it called an elephant bike? One of the really heavy, like an old post bike almost.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
But just to see somebody else who also just cycles as part of daily life and normal. And yeah, and we just cycled together for a bit. And just things like that just kept happening, and it was really lovely.
Oh, it would have been energising as well. And I know exactly what you mean. Like, sometimes you do just want to have a break from anyone and just be with your own thoughts and not have to think. But then there's also there's a beauty in being able to share part of the journey with ultimately complete strangers as well. Chat to them, have an insight into what their day-to-day is, or why they're in this part of the world if they're on a little mini adventure of their own, and enjoy places that you see, see something and go, wow, look at that, together as well. Like, there's something beautiful in that moment too.
Yeah. Oh, there were so many moments when I was on my own and I'd be looking over like the cliffs or something, and I just thought, oh, this is wonderful. There's nobody, there's nobody else here. But there were quite a few cyclists who I was we'd like leapfrog each other going round the north coast. And there was a French guy, and we were both experiencing just not the best weather all the way round the coast of the mainland. And then we both ended up going through Orkney and Shetland at the same time, and we'd often find ourselves at the same camp spots. And yeah, it was just quite amusing, because we were both just there almost like, at least I had the purpose of the concert, but he was on holiday and not necessarily having the best time. And yeah, it was quite nice until one night he pitched his tent insanely close to mine, and the snoring just kept me up all night. And after that, I hope we never cross paths again.
He was content to be asleep. He wasn't worrying about the noises outside the tent that night. Oh gosh, something I want to talk about is the other use of travel on your trips. After you finished this tour, you also then went across to France, and the way that you went across was you used the Sail Link ferry. I've spoken about this previously with the other awesome guest, Claire White. Claire, you're a dear friend of mine, love you to bits, and Claire crossed back from France to the UK using the Sail Link ferry. She had some, let's just say that the sea was turbulent that day. What about you? What was your crossing like? And I want you to share your experience about this awesome venture, which is encouraging people, human-powered travel for a more sustainable crossing, a little bit different too.
It was wonderful. It was like being in a dream. It was probably the opposite of Claire's crossing. It took 8 hours, maybe a little bit more. There was a little bit of wind, but it was in the wrong direction. And it was just, flat calm. And there were only 2 of us as passengers, 3 crew. And the people who run it, they're just just brilliant people, because I was due to take the ferry maybe a week earlier, and the weather was too bad that they cancelled the crossings. But they don't just put on a fixed replacement and you have to go on that day. They made enough that they would still run the service even with 2 passengers. And I don't know many other transport services, if you can consider it that would do that. So we basically had the boat to ourselves. And to travel that way you get, yeah, you get a better sense of the distance as well, but to be that close to the water and just everything. And I've already booked, or haven't yet chosen the dates, but I've got tickets for this year because I just want to cross that way again. And yeah, I played my gamba on the boat. It wasn't a sneaky
Oh my
plan or
gosh!
anything. It
Whoa,
just,
you played the
yeah,
gamba on the catamaran. Oh wow, that's
yeah,
amazing. Oh,
yeah.
is there like a picture or video of this that exists?
I think there is a little bit of video of me probably playing something wrong, yeah, on their Instagram page. But it was, yeah, it was just wonderful, and I would recommend it to anyone who is cycling or a foot passenger. But they were so accommodating because I wrote to them beforehand to just say it's not just a bike, but I've got a massive instrument with me, and they were like, yeah, sure, no problem, just bring it on. And it was no problem. They keep your bikes inside, so you're not going to get salt spray on them or anything like that, and you can do as much or as little as you want to help with the boat stuff. I used to sell dinghies. I should know more than this. And yeah, it's just, I'd really recommend it. It's so much less stressful than queuing for ages in amongst like petrol, diesel fumes for a big ferry. And then with the passport check, they come on the boat when you get to France and just very quickly check it and off you go. It was just so easy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's on my bucket list to do. When I listened to Claire, and look, yeah, Claire had a little bit of a turbulent time, but she still absolutely raves about it and about the service, and she wants to do it again. And it's definitely a way that I would like to go across. I think it would be brilliant. My husband's super keen because he sailed a little bit when he was growing up as well, and he's very keen into that sort of side of things. And no, I just love the idea that, it's a different way of doing things. And it's sort of like an adventure within the adventure as well. Like, you were saying it was an 8-hour crossing for you that day because the winds were a little bit lighter, but you've got these great memories from it. But it's so starkly different to how we would perceive to get across a body of water as well. So, no, I love it. Listeners, I'm going to put a link to Sail Link in the show notes so you can learn more about them as well. And yeah, definitely seek them out. I think they're a fantastic small operator. They are tiny. Like, they are honestly looking at ways of making this more sustainable and to work. And, they have been able to have enough funds to keep operating for 2026. And I think the more people that talk about it and share it, the more that awesome people like this will provide these fantastic services for us as well. You mentioned there that you used to sail dinghies. I think I came across something, Sarah, where you would do a post which was wrapping up your week, and you actually arrived somewhere and it said, it prompted my thoughts of sailing and back to a 24-hour race here. Is that a sailing thing that you did?
Yeah, yeah, it's a race that lasts 24 hours. It's what
Wow,
it
I need
says.
to know about this. So what were you sailing? Was it on your own? Was it with a crew? Like, what? Tell me all about it.
So I grew up sailing and racing dinghies, and it was always sailing and music, and they were basically competing against each other as to which took priority. And yeah, I used to sail all around the UK and sometimes abroad. I remember a very, very long drive to Austria once. Yeah, anyway, fond memories. Yeah, so the 24-hour race is a race that happens probably in lots of places. Actually, I've done several in various reservoirs around the UK, but that particular one was in Stockport on the coast, and there's an inland reservoir. And yeah, just race for 24 hours as a team. So not for the whole 24 hours, but there were some people who did do that.
Wow, so it's sort of like a relay on the boat. So
Yeah.
you take turns. Do you get to sail much at all now, or is that something you used to do and not now?
It's something I used to do and wish I did more of. However, I've just moved to Edinburgh and there's a sailing club right on the water. So I think it won't be long before I'm back in a boat.
Oh, wow. And that move to Edinburgh as well. I know there's a cool little community there. I've talked about ESA before, and I've talked about towpath talks before as well. But yeah, Edinburgh seems an awesome city for that, for bikes, full stop.
Oh yeah, there's bikes absolutely everywhere, and so many like bike co-ops and just wonderful things going on. It just seems like the right place for the moment.
Something we haven't discussed more of, and I mean, we did chat about bananas, but is food. And Sarah, I can't do a pod that doesn't talk about food. I want to talk about food on tour, whether that's your default food that you would eat when you were camped somewhere, or whether it was something that someone at a warm showers host put on for you. Tell me about something food related.
I think for my own catering, it wasn't the most exciting thing. I definitely ate an absurd amount of oats and dried fruit, and yeah, mushy bananas, because bananas, when they're at that state, you generally get them for free. So it was just super cheap. But every time I stayed with a host, I just felt like I was, yeah, getting kind of restaurant quality food. This just people were just so generous and made such delicious things. And I think one of those meals, maybe the one that you're alluding to that we spoke about before we started recording.
Oh, I love this story. Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's the way that you're going to arrive at somebody's house, and this wasn't somebody who was a warm showers host, so their maybe idea of what my day looked like cycling was very different to somebody who also cycle tours might think. And so after just basically having a very, very soggy day, including wading through floodwater, carrying various bits of bike and instrument and bags and whatnot, and probably smelling like a pond, and turning up on the doorstep, I was then fed the most delicious meal with silver service and truffle on top, which I'd never had before and probably will never ever have again unless somebody else is paid. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, this is so hilarious that we've come together for the reason of this concert the following day, but we've had very, very different experiences. And like I just wondered if should I confess how I was basically sat in a lay-by earlier that day eating chickpeas out of the can for my lunch, and I just these two worlds kind of collide, and that happens quite a lot, and I find it quite funny.
Oh, how did they receive you? Like, because I'm just picturing people at the other end of the spectrum. And can we just also have a shout out? This was this year, like this was in winter, like this is cold and grim weather, right? Like, storms pelting the country. So you're out there in the elements and you're coming into this lovely house that's, serving you this beautiful prim and proper food. Like, were they sort of taken aback, or did they just take it in their stride?
I think they were a little bit taken aback. This also happened on the tour when basically any time that you stay with people who are not, just have a different idea of what your days look like. Often they have white carpets or just a house that you're just so scared that you're going to mess up. And on this occasion, I just got there and I was just dripping, like black water was just like oozing out of my shoes. It was so grim. And they're just like, oh, just come in, don't take your shoes off. And I thought, no, you can't let me in your house. And just, I think maybe just they had a kind of like a visual filter of what they're actually seeing.
Or I imagine the topic at dinner would have been amazing as well. Like, you connecting over music and something shared in common there, a shared passion. And whether it's a warm showers host that's telling you about their bike tours, or whether it's someone who's really interested in classical music that you're playing and you're connecting over that, you'd have some amazing conversations as well.
Absolutely. And the other night I stayed with somebody who has just, or maybe not just, but she's written a series of murder mysteries. And so I left with a book to read. And just, I wouldn't have had that if I'd have gone somewhere else. So,
Oh my gosh, just absolutely brilliant. But the sounds of it though, Sarah, like there's a part of me that feels like I missed out because I didn't get to see you play last year. But like I said, you're on my bucket list. Somehow I'm going to make it happen that I get to see you play somewhere. I guess for listeners who want to keep an eye out for this, what's the best way of them keeping up to date with what you are going to be scheduling? Like I'll post links to your Instagram account, but are there other things that I should be making people aware of as well?
Probably just Instagram, which I'm terrible at updating, but when something happens I will share it in time.
All right. And I think your Instagram handle, is it Small Sarah?
Yeah, because my surname's Small. It's not a description.
No. When we were saying people's perceptions of reality. Perceiving someone who's maybe 4 foot something and then you turn up. The viola da gamba is certainly not small either.
No.
Oh my gosh, you'd have a really hard time playing that if you were small, wouldn't you?
Yeah. There are some, you can get them in slightly different sizes, but I'm fortunate, yeah.
Oh, no, I love it. I love it because it's sort of something that looks totally impractical to take on your bike, and you did it anyway, which is great. Well, actually, I am going to ask you that question. Other than the viola da gamba, which obviously wasn't a luxury item, it was critical to your tour, is there a little item of luxury that you do pack in with you, totally unnecessary but necessary for you to take on your bike adventure?
Tabasco. I had a bottle of Tabasco, and at one point I lost my wallet, which had a lot of cash in, and I did find it again, but I was probably more upset about the Tabasco going missing than my wallet.
Which tells me that you like things with a little bit of spice as well.
Yeah, or that I was just eating such boring food that I just needed anything to add flavour.
Here in Australia, Sarah, there is a known thing that if you're eating something that's a bit grim, just adding tomato sauce in copious amounts will make everything better. So I'm guessing you use the same theory with Tabasco
Yeah.
sauce. Very,
Yeah,
very
that would.
good. Oh, gosh. Sarah, I have to bring things to a close. I've got 3 questions for you that I ask all my guests. The first one is actually music related. You're a guest now of the pod, which means you get to pick a song that's going to be the soundtrack to this adventure, and it gets to go on the Seek Travel My Music playlist, one song chosen by every single guest of the pod. What song are you going to pick to be the soundtrack of your adventures?
I feel like it has to be Good Again, which is by Tobias Hume. It's the piece that inspired the whole tour and just had me questioning how we can, make things good again. And I also think it might be the first gamba track that you have on your playlist. So
Definitely be the first gamba track that I have on my playlist. But I love it, and I would have been a little bit upset if it wasn't a gamba track that you chose. So I'm glad that you did do that. Well, listeners, I'll add it, and if you're seeking it out, I have the playlist available both on Spotify and also Apple Music. It's a very eclectic list. It's hours and hours and hours long now, and you'll go from someone with a gamba song to maybe some 80s electro beats to some pop tune, but all of them mean something to every guest, and I'm really happy to have one there from you now, Sarah. Okay, next question. I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, so I'm going to preface this by saying on this day, it's just you on your bike and the viola da gamba's not there. So you have a choice one day, and you can choose to be riding left, which is going to take you on a never-ending washboard, corrugated, bumpy road, the bumpiest road of your life, no relentlessness. Or if you go right, you're going to be straight into the most mother of a headwind, nearly blows you to a stop. It's unrelenting as well. Are you going to go left or right?
See, if I had the gamba, it would immediately be headwind is the choice.
That's why I had to take the gamba out of play.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Damn it. I think it's still going to be headwind.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? And I've said this a number of times now. I've experienced both. I hate both with a passion, but I would choose the headwind over an unrelenting washboard road. Like, there's just... And the people that tell me that it's more adventurous and there's always a little bit of smoothness in the middle, yeah, there might be, but after about 5 minutes, it's, like, horrendous. Whereas the headwind, I guess you can stop and just turn around so you can hear again, and I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there is that. You can't hear anything when it's a headwind.
Yeah, no, food gets me through on a headwind day. Food gets me through anyway. Who am I kidding? All right, final question for you, Sarah, and that is I want you to finish this sentence for me, and the sentence is, the best thing about taking a bike adventure is...
I'm reluctant to say freedom because it is that, but everybody says freedom. Inner quiet.
Oh, inner quiet. Do you mean like it gives you the space to just have time with your own thoughts or not have thoughts?
I just think there's so much noise in my case, there's so much noise in my head, but also so much noise externally. And there's just something about getting on the bike and setting off that it all just goes quiet.
Oh, I just 100% feel that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to have a thing whenever I used to ride to work that it was the best way to start and end the day. And on some days, I could either solve problems or totally just forget about them. It's that ladder that you're talking about there. Like you're just, away on your own, not having to think, just observing. I think something that's been awesome about your tour, Sarah, is it has taken you specifically to places in between. And you have felt the landscape on your tour. Music is a sensory thing that you feel, that you acoustically hear. But I feel like when people hear a song, often it can take you to a moment, it can take you to a place, you visually can see something. And I was just thinking of the magic that would have happened for you day in, day out, regardless of whether the weather was pelting down, or maybe it was and you were nearly blown sideways off the bike when the wind catches the gamba. But then you're somewhere magic, high up in the north area of Scotland or somewhere in hilly terrain in Wales, and then Mother Nature gives you a rainbow, or the silver lining on the cloud. Like, I feel there's so much of your tour that was a sensory experience, and I feel that that's the case for many people who travel by bike. So the inner quiet is one thing, and then also knowing that that inner quiet allows you to feel things, to feel the landscape, see the changes, have connections, find community, bring this bit of amazing energy to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. I just think it's absolutely awesome. What an absolute pleasure. What an absolute privilege to have you as a guest of the show. Thanks so much for sharing your stories and experiences here on the pod for Seek Travel Ride.
Thank you so much for having me. I really don't feel like deserving to be on this compared to all the amazing adventures you have. But yeah, thank you so much for speaking to me.
Oh, no, I have to have the final word here, Sarah. It's something I said earlier in the show. I hope one day you can just look back and see that what you've done totally deserves to be on this show. This show is here to highlight stories like yours, and be proud. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Listeners, I'm super energised after my chat there with Sarah. It was very early hours here in Australia with me recording with her there in the UK, and I've had a cup of coffee, but I feel like I'm properly caffeinated in a way virtually, just with the stories that she was sharing there. After I stopped our recording, we chatted a bit offline, and something that Sarah shared with me was something that I wanted to share with you as well. She was talking about the confidence that she's gotten as a result of taking this bike tour, of touring her music as well. She was saying that this time last year she would never have been comfortable being in a room speaking with people. She would never have been comfortable talking about certain topics before. She would never have been comfortable taking on the things that she's taking on now. And it's given her that self-confidence boost to do stuff and to also see that people resonate with it as well. And the idea that this has happened, she's actually written music now which translates the feelings of what this tour gave for her. Her music is based on the landscape she was travelling through, the feelings of that landscape, that sensory awareness that I was alluding to at the very end of the show. And just sort of hearing her say that offline, it was something that I wanted to share with you all as well. I definitely encourage you to seek her out, and if possible, if she's going to be playing somewhere near you, oh my gosh, totally take yourself along and check out the images and the videos that I'm going to be sharing on our social pages as well, because it's pretty incredible what she's done, and I just love her adventure so much. I also love talking about how she realised that there are places that don't get these sort of opportunities to hear live music, and just because they're off the beaten path, they're not near a big town, they're not near a big city, it doesn't mean that the appetite for people like Sarah producing music like hers isn't there. And I loved also hearing about the senses of community that she would come across. It was hilarious hearing her talking about being served a meal with silver service, having just gone through the most dreary weather event to make her way to this place as well. And just how she was welcomed in by everyone along the way. And lastly, what I really loved as well was before this whole tour with her viola da gamba came about, she was actually really inspired to take bike travel on because she specifically wanted to seek out connections with people, the people that it would allow her to have conversations with, the places that she could travel to, and those sort of experiences that only traveling on a bike can give you. I often say how when you travel on a bike all loaded up, you are a magnet to conversation. So could you imagine the people that would totally draw themselves to Sarah when they see a bike that's loaded up and then there's a huge viola da gamba attached to it? I'm sure it was many a conversation starter. Oh, thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on the pod. And listeners, if you love this pod and you're listening to it to inspire you to take on your own adventures, or perhaps you already take adventures and you just want to hear more about others, well, you can make sure this pod keeps coming to you with new episodes each and every week by showing you're a super fan and buying me a coffee. Simply head to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. When you do, leave me a message and let me know what is it that you love about this podcast and where will your next bike adventure be taking you. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. And that's the end of the episode, listeners. Don't forget, be sure to check out Old Man Mountain, who are supporting Seek Travel Ride this year. I am a massive fan of their gear, and I 100% recommend you check out the Hemlock bags and flip cages, a super handy and robust bag and cargo cage system. I love them, and I'm sure you will too. Head to oldmanmountain.com and support the brands that support this podcast.